All right, in this video we're going to talk about how to prevent your plants from becoming weak, lanky, stretched out. So, how do you grow strong and robust plants? Well, we're going to talk about that, how to keep your plants sturdy, how to keep your plants green and healthy. Most importantly, how to prevent all your seedlings from flopping over, from growing super long and lanky stems. And I'm going to give a quick summary. So what we're going to be talking about is the quality of lighting. The absolute most important thing to all plants, and especially to keeping your plants strong and robust, is the quality of grow light you're using, the window, the amount of sun coming through the windows. Where are you taking your plants outside? Is it in a greenhouse? Are you giving your plants direct sunlight? The next important factor is, are your plants being exposed to stress? If they're outside, they're getting blown around by the wind, they're getting knocked into by insects and animals. If they're in a grow room, or if they're in a greenhouse, they're basically in a test tube environment. They're not being exposed to stress. So you need airflow. You can see the fan down there. I have the fan turned off so you can hear me talk, but having a fan on your plants is extremely important for keeping them exposed to a certain degree of stress so that they strengthen their stems. Okay? So, airflow and basically wind to keep your plants strong, and the quality of light are all influenced also by the spacing in between your plants. So I know we've talked about in other videos how we have our plants growing in different size containers. Here is the red gem marigold growing in the 4-pack, all growing together in the tray. Now, we talked about transplanting as a way to give your plants more space, but in this video we'll also just show you how you can physically, can you see that? You can physically separate your plants and create more distance in between your plants, so that when the plants grow their leaves, they are not crowding and bumping into each other. All right, so these giant marigolds are getting quite big now, and we don't necessarily need to transplant them again right away, but if they were all in the same tray, they would be so close together that, let's just show you what they would look like. They'd be all bunched up together here like they were when they were all together in a tray, and that would be blocking out the quality of light and also blocking out the wind and causing the plants to grow weaker. So it really comes back to the lighting and the wind and the stress that the plants are exposed to. Now, I want to first talk about if you're growing indoors, you probably are using some type of light, probably a fluorescent grow light. I want to urge you to do your research, and you should be using a light that's intended for growing plants. If you're using the fluorescent bulb in your basement or in your shop, it's probably not intended for growing plants, and it doesn't have the proper spectrum of light for your plants to grow. Now, this is, I believe the company, it's AgroBright. It's a T5 fluorescent grow fixture. There are 8 bulbs in here. T5 just basically stands for the size of the bulb. T5 is just the newest type of fluorescent bulb they're coming out with. They're extremely skinny, 5/8 of an inch. They're more energy efficient. More importantly, these are specific grow bulbs, specific T5 grow bulbs. Let me just jump over here for a second. So you can see we're using 4 units. And I want to just mention that if you're buying a grow fixture, they have 2 different types of bulbs that are designed for plants. One is a cool blue light. The other one is a warm red light. So what that refers to is the type of wavelengths of the light. So the bulb that you want for starting your seedlings is the cool light, the cool blue, and you want something that has a number above 5,000 Kelvin. These bulbs are, I believe, 6,400 K. Okay, and that's just the frequency of the light. That's how quickly the light waves go up and down through the air. And we won't get into that. I just wanted to try to simplify it. But they also sell a red light, a bulb that has light on a lower frequency under around 2000 K, and those bulbs are more for when you're trying to get your plants to fruit and flower and bud and create seeds. But when you're trying to grow a robust seedling, you want to make sure you have the bulb that is 6400 K, or at least something above 5000 K, that mimics the daylight early on in the spring. It gives the plants what they need to grow vegetatively, okay? So without further ado, I don't want to complicate that. If you order from online a fluorescent grow fixture, it's most likely going to come with a grow bulb intended for vegetative growth, 6400K. Just check that. There are other options besides fluorescent. There are LED, metal halide, high pressure sodium. Those last two are some of the older, more common varieties. But the LED, they're coming out with a lot of new full spectrum LED lighting systems, but they are a little expensive. I just like this system. Now, it must be noted that no matter what quality of artificial light you're using, it's still never going to be enough. It's still never going to mimic the sun perfectly. So the best thing you can do is get your plants outside into direct sunlight. Now, our grow area does have windows that face west. That means we start getting sunlight around 11:30 to noon and all the way up until 4. So we get 3 to 4 hours of direct sunlight in this grow room, and we keep our lights on for about 17 hours a day. So it's really important. I forgot to mention, the quality of lighting is extremely important, but also the amount of hours of light that you're giving your plant. So you don't want to have your lights on 24 hours a day, because it's really important for your plants to rest. They need a dark phase where they process all of the energy from the sun that they collected during the light, during the time that they were exposed to light. So if you have your plants under the light 24 hours a day, that's going to cause them to stretch out. Also, you don't want to have your plants growing with too little light. So if you start your seedlings in like January, when the daylight hours are still short, you're going to need to make sure that you're giving them a couple extra hours length in time with your grow lights, because certain plants need a longer daylight time frame when they're at the beginning stages of growth, when they're in the vegetative stage of growth of their life, okay? To make sure you have your lights at the proper time, you can buy a light timer. So these lights are on a light timer. I think they're going, between 15 and 18 hours a day. They do shut off when the sun starts coming through these windows, okay? But the most important piece of advice I can give you in this video is to make sure your plants are getting direct sunlight. So what we do is we actually physically take these plants outside into our greenhouse so that they get actual sunlight. And then if it's a nice sunny day, not cold and rainy like today, but if it's a nice sunny day, we will bring our plants outside of the greenhouse into the direct sunlight so that we are exposing our plants to the full rays of the sun and also the stress of the wind. That's actually causes your plants to start hardening off. It starts strengthening them and getting them ready for the actual gardening environment. Okay, so we talked about the quality of light. Lighting is the most important factor. Next is the fan. You need to have airflow. If you're not growing your plants outside, they're not exposed to any kind of stress. There's no bugs, animals, wind. There's nothing telling this plant that it better toughen up. Okay, so you have the fan going mostly to toughen up your plants, to jostle those leaves so the plants are under stress and they strengthen their cell walls. All right, and this fan blows across the whole grow area. I actually would like to have a second fan to provide even more stimulus to these plants. Anyway, ventilation is also extremely important to circulate airflow so your plants can breathe, and to also eliminate disease problems that occur when you're growing plants in stagnant air, moist air, where spores of bacteria and fungi can land on your plant and get your plant sick. So airflow has other benefits, but for the sake of just growing a strong, robust, plant that's not Lanky, I like having a fan just for that sake, to strengthen it up. However, if you have your plants next to a window and grow lights, it gets hot. So the wind actually helps cool your plants down. So temperature is another factor. It's an extremely important factor for plant health. I'm not going to talk about it as much in this video because I think lighting and stressors are the two most important things to grow a strong plant. I will just make one comment on temperature, is that some plants like warm weather. I think I may have said this already. Some plants like cold weather, like these kale plants, broccoli. If you're growing a plant like a tomato, a marigold, what else? Basil. Certain plants really like warm weather. So you might want to have a heating mat underneath them, or you might just want to have the grow room that you're growing in at the proper temperature. And you can look that information up on Google. Yep. So, and then also you want to be circulating your air so that your grow fixtures and your the sunlight isn't overheating your plant as well. All right. The final piece that I want to talk about in this video is, again, coming back to space. Your plants need the proper space in general through transplanting in order to grow healthily, in order to grow into a nice, big, strong plant. However, giving your plant the proper space also allows them to have the proper amount of light and also the proper amount of wind coming through. Okay? So if your plants are too crowded together, let's just look at these seedlings. See all these little baby plants? If I allow them to grow that closely together for too long of a time, then they're going to start to create shade. So as we talked about light being the most important factor, they're going to take away that light through shading each other. And we talked about the second most important factor being the jostling of the leaves. So if your plants, let me just show you these tomato plants, are actually starting to grow closer together. These are actually starting to get a little weak. When the plants are growing close together, they are not exposed to the full effect of the wind. So they are artificially growing up together as one and supporting each other and providing this false sense of security. So then when you separate your plants, they are not as strong as they would be if they were growing with the proper amount of space. So you can see the tomato plants here that are in the 3-gallon pots. We constantly give these plants enough space by physically separating the pots so that they're far enough apart. All right, so here are some more tomatoes growing in 6-pack containers. They're growing pretty strong. They look pretty healthy. But at a certain point, you're going to want to have them in their own individual containers, like these giant marigolds, so that you could separate them out physically and pull the plants apart and give them space in between each other. So you're not always having to transplant them to create more space. So we did talk about in other videos how we transplant and transplant and transplant. But if the plants are transplanted into their own individual containers, then in between transplanting, you could physically separate your plants and give them more room just by spacing the pot further apart, like we did with the bigger tomato plants down at the end, like we are starting to do with the giant marigolds, and like we will need to do with these tomatoes growing in 6-pack containers. All right, great. I might take us out to the greenhouse for this video and show you what we're doing out there, because we moved half of our plants, or maybe 40% of the plants that we're growing here, all got moved out to the greenhouse last week because we stopped having really cold nights. So I thought it was an appropriate time to get the plants out there into the greenhouse, because as you can see, I'm just counting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I only have 8 giant marigolds per tray just sitting in there. And if you recall from the other videos, these trays actually fit 18 marigolds growing in this size pot. So just to show you the amount of plants per square inch or per square foot has decreased substantially. So that's why we began bringing a lot of our plants out to the greenhouse so that we can physically create space by separating these growing space we have here. And you can see we're only growing, now we only have 7 giant marigolds in the same space that we used to have 18. And some of our larger plants like the sunflowers here, the giant marigolds are all now in their individual pots. They were all spread out. Even the red gem marigolds now that are in these 6-packs or 4-packs. We are now, here's some cauliflower. We're now starting to transplant those red gem marigolds into their own separate grow containers. We're starting a bunch of seedlings here. We have our soil mix that we're blending. Starting to bring out all the plants that can tolerate a little bit more cold weather. Onions, cauliflower, broccoli, kale. Even though we have some plants like marigolds and sunflowers out here that need slightly warmer conditions, where anything that could handle a little bit of the cold is coming out here, because here it is in the morning. It just snowed again. It is a little chilly. Here's some sunflower plants that are getting a little lanky. I have not had a fan in this greenhouse, so seedlings can really be set back from day one if you plant your seedlings, if you plant your seeds too close together, and if you don't give them the right amount of disturbance. And you could just take your hands and give them some disturbance too. But you could really grow a weak, lanky plant right from the beginning, or you could strengthen that plant and grow a robust, healthy plant right from the beginning. Now, these aren't too bad, okay? But I'm just showing that, you know, I'm probably going to want to be, there's 2 plants growing in every planting cell here. I'm going to probably go through and pull out one so that now there will only be 1 plant growing in each here. All right. I just wanted to show you that before I go to the summary of this video. And more plants. So you need a lot of space when you're working with a lot of plants. Just to let you know, you're constantly moving things around, you're constantly transplanting, and your seedlings are constantly getting bigger. So let's go to the summary video. And so here we are in the greenhouse. It's finally a nice day, and I wanted to just summarize this talk. So whenever you're growing plants in pots, that's an unnatural process. I mean, just the act of growing vegetables and farming is actually an inherently unnatural process. Most of the vegetables that we use are from other parts of the world and have been selectively bred for thousands of years to meet our needs, not to meet the plant's needs and their natural growth requirements. So, you know, farming in general, gardening in general is an unnatural process because we're kind of taking plants from all over the world and trying to grow them in our garden. And to accomplish this, we are, you know, we might be in a colder or a different climate than where these plants come from. So we're starting our plants indoors 6 to 8 weeks, 2 months, 3 months before our growing season actually starts. So again, that's an unnatural process. Growing plants in a greenhouse, growing plants indoors is inherently unnatural. It's a test tube environment. You're not exposing the plants to the outdoors. The plants are not sprouting based on their own desire to sprout naturally in the environment. We're basically forcing the plants to sprout by tricking them into thinking it's warm enough to grow. So here we are outside, and if at all possible, as we discussed, bring your plants outside to the garden. It's a nice day. It's a little chilly, however, so I'm only bringing the plants outside, such as kale and broccoli and spinach. Actually, spinach is growing in the garden beds already. Chinese cabbage. So our cold-loving plants I'm bringing out to the garden today to get some natural sunlight, to get some natural wind. You can see the leaves getting blown around. It's a nice sunny day. So, if at all possible, get the plants into the most natural environment as you can. And that is typically outside. Get you as close as possible to where those plants naturally want to be. And as a final remark here, it's important to notice or to keep track of what plants you are bringing outside. So you don't want to accidentally take your plants outside because I told you to and then kill them. So on a cold day, I would not take out my marigolds and my tomatoes and my basil plants and my peppers and plants that like warm weather. I would not take them right outside on a sunny day just because I wanted them to get more sun. I'm still paying close attention to everything, and the natural growth of that plant, where that plant came from in nature. You want to try to mimic those conditions. So plants such as cauliflower that can handle the cold weather, they can go out there for a couple hours even on a cold day. And another thing to note is the first time you're bringing your plants outdoors, they're a little weak. They've never really been exposed to direct sunlight. They've never been exposed to the wind. So make sure that they're hydrated, first of all. Make sure that they have water. Because I took these plants outside, and in about an hour, they almost started dying. Well, actually, they were in the greenhouse, and they almost started dying because they were all of a sudden thrown into the greenhouse environment that was 90 degrees instead of the nice indoor growing environment that's at a nice 70 degrees. So do everything in moderation. Do everything a little bit at a time. Take your plants outdoors for a couple hours, for a few times a week for a couple hours. You know, monitor them. Take them out longer and longer each time. So allow your plants to strengthen. Allow your plants to get used to the environment. And really, you're also adapting yourself in your own behavior. So you need to get used to the environment. You need to get used to the growth habits of your plants so you don't accidentally expose a plant to an environment that it's not used to or that it doesn't want to be in. So the very last comment here is to take chances, experiment, but don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Plant 10 seeds one week, 10 seeds the next week. Don't plant your entire seed packet all at once, because then if you make a mistake, like, you brought your plants outside and you forgot to bring them back inside, and then you got snow and freezing temperatures and all of your plants are dead. So it's better to do a couple seeds a week, a couple varieties a week. And like we talked about in the other videos, timing is really important based on what species you're growing. Does that plant like cold weather? Does that plant grow slowly? Plant those ones first. You don't want to get stuck with a tremendous number of fast-growing plants that you don't know what to deal with, because one small mistake and I could wipe out all of these big plants because they are already growing in an unnatural environment and kind of maxing out this indoor artificial growing condition. So grow a little bit at a time, learn from your mistakes, trial and error. And you don't have to. I don't intend to make these videos so that you follow what I do verbatim. I intend to make these videos so you have an idea of how to get started, and so you can start trying your own techniques and you're developing your own experiences. And I'm just trying to get you off to a head start, kind of like we're giving these plants a head start. I'm trying to give you a head start and get you guys off to a better jump, so that you don't make the same mistakes that I've made over the years. And so you can have a good gardening season. So, all right, I really hope this video wasn't too long. Again, this is one of my longest videos. I just got a video editing software, so I'm going to be trying to include different pieces of advice and trying to make the punchlines and the important parts of the video stick. And I'm going to keep making videos, so stay tuned. We'll be talking about these cold-loving plants and how to get your cold season crops started. So we'll be going outside and talking about our hoop covers and our low tunnels. We will also be having a video about how to make your own organic soil blend and potting mix. So we'll be talking about soil fertility and how to fertilize your baby plants, how to make compost teas, how to give your plants the nutritional requirements and how to balance moisture, how to do watering properly, how to make sure your plants don't dry out, how to make sure your plants aren't overwatered. So we'll be now that we're kind of getting past the basics here with spacing and transplanting, we'll start moving into some more advanced topics, and then we'll start heading into edible landscaping, fruit and nut trees, and perennial vegetables, and herbs, and native flowers. So that's kind of where we're heading. I really hope you watch these videos through. If they're too long, if they're boring, just go to the settings and change it to 1.5 speed, and that way the videos will go through a little faster. But I really think the information that I'm giving you is important. Even if I repeat myself, that's because these are the important factors. Please like the video. It has a lot of value to me, but it does not cost you anything. It allows me to know if I'm doing a good job, and I will make more videos of the ones you like. So leave a comment, ask me questions, tell me what you want to hear, tell me if you liked what I am producing, and good luck, trial and error, try your best, but get started, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't start all your seeds at once. All right, see you later.